Welcome back with a smiling face. Links to previous episodes are given in the video description, so don't forget to like, subscribe and share the video. Behind the Closed Doors. Episode 6. Chapter 48. Crystal POV. I could kill Zanan for what he did to me yesterday. It took me half an hour to get out of that stupid pit and I spent 2 hours walking around drenched in syrup and flour. To say I was mad will be the understatement of the year, but I lost, so I took what he gave me like the big girl I am, even if it was just by a split second. When Tracy approached me yesterday introducing Julian, my eyes nearly popped out. Don't get me wrong, I'm marked and mated, but there is nothing wrong with looking and dreaming. Everything about Julian shouted strength and power. We explained what is going on and realization set in on Tracy's face and she began to laugh. When I looked up at Julian I could see him staring at her and I felt uncomfortable. He stared at her with so much love that I could swear they are mates if I didn't know any better. I wanted to link in with them, but I couldn't due to the syrup and flour, so I settled with asking them to follow me. What happened to you? I heard a very familiar voice behind me and spun around. I looked up and stared at no one other than Tyler. I squealed and jumped on him, ignoring the way I look. I crossed my legs around his waist and hugged him for dear life. What are you doing here? I asked, not letting go. Zanan called me yesterday, he said, and I looked at him puzzled. I looked over his shoulder and saw Zanan approaching. I jumped off Tyler and met Zanan halfway. He held up his hands in mock surrender and lowered his head. Please don't be mad, I don't think I can take any more of your madness, he said, and I just smiled at him knowingly. So this is your way of apologizing? I asked and hugged him before he could pull away or jump back. He chuckled and hugged me back, saying I can go get cleaned up. I took Tyler's hand and excused myself from everyone and left. When I said get cleaned up I meant alone. Zanan shouted. Well, I need someone to wash my back, and if you forgot, you are in the dog box for 2 weeks. I shouted over my shoulder and saw his face fall. I am currently with my girls, feeding them and drying them, making sure they are happy. We got one of the younger she-wolves looking after the babies. Well, she asked if she could because she doesn't drink or anything and she is not much of a party person, and Kyle said no one will be excused. She looked at me with such sad puppy dog eyes that I couldn't say no to her. Amara, are you sure you are okay? Don't you want to go out for a while? I asked, and the look she gave me said it all. No thank you. I am much safer here than out there, she said and smiled at me. I handed her Hazel and picked up Isabella. I know they are twins, but they look so different from each other, like day and night. When she was sleeping I put her down and made my way outside. Today is the last day of the party because tomorrow is Sunday and everything will be gone tomorrow, for which I am very happy about. I think I need more days to recover. 1 day will so not be enough. Where have you been? Zanan asked me as soon as I walked outside. I looked at him with a expression and said, I am a mother, you know. I said and walked past him. I walked onto the field and took my clothes off, revealing my black and gold bikini I had put on this morning. Some males whistled at me and some females just stared at me with envy. I ignored all of them and looked at Zanan, who was staring at me open-mouthed. Today is Torture Zanan Day. I walked over to Kyle to find out what today's games will be, and he said the one thing that made me wish I went to college. Beer pong, but with a twist. Seeing that we are wolves and our accuracy is quite good, we will be balancing on a beam, and we have to hop the ball, not throw it. I smirked at him and asked who I will be up against. The winner can have anyone who is willing to challenge them. Kyle said, and that made my day. I stepped up to the beams and saw that I am up against Julian. Oh yeah, they joined the party before all the serious stuff begins. He smirked at me and we both got onto our beams. Good luck, Crystal. he said, and my name sounded like candy coming from his tongue. What is wrong with me? I have a mate. I scolded myself and just smiled at him, not trusting my voice. I saw Julian moving around until he had his balance and I was a bit hesitant, so I called Kyle and asked him, "What is the punishment if you lose?" He looked at me and said, 100 shots with a drop of wolfsbane in each. My mouth fell open and I just stared at him. Where do you come up with all this? I asked and stepped onto my beam. This thing is moving. I shouted when I almost fell off and everyone laughed at me. I took a second and found my balance, knowing that I will not fall. I was just trying to be a bit dramatic. I looked up and smirked at Julian, and now it was his time to suck in a breath. Julian POV: I can't remember the last time I've had so much fun. Coming here didn't seem like a good idea yesterday, but everything just looked so tempting and fun. I watched as Tracy and Zane chased each other with water guns, and I wish I could join them, but I don't want to give this whole field a shock, and certainly not her. I pushed my emotions deep down and sealed them up tightly. When I did that, I started noticing all the girls and how they are looking at me like I'm something to eat. Tracy introduced me to Zanan yesterday and he looked more or less my build and height, so I asked him if I can borrow some shorts. When he came out, he brought me brand new ones, knowing that his smell will be on the others. I took the shorts and walked off into the forest where I got dressed. I pondered over the thought of, do I put my shirt on or do I leave it off, so I eventually decided to just leave it off. The shorts are a bit tight, but not too tight, and it's swimming shorts. I walked out from behind the tree and every female stared at me, including Tracy. Her mouth just fell open. I did a slow turn for her and asked, "Does this look okay?" She looked at me and said, "It looks fine." Her voice came out a bit too sharp and I could smell her arousal. If I didn't catch her licking her lips while staring at me, I would have thought her mate turned her on, but know that lust in her eyes is for me. I smirked at that and walked off. Today is like yesterday, but it's the last day and I have decided to let go and really have some fun. If the vampire royals knew that 2 vampires is having a party with wolves, we would be disowned and looked down upon. I rubbed my hands together and looked around. Seeing that everything is about drinking and letting loose, I started by the beer pong table. Never in my life, and I mean never, have I seen a beer pong table looking like this. I listened as someone was explaining the rules and decided to give it a try, and from just that try I have been up here for the last 2 hours. No one can beat me. I heard an angelic voice and looked up and saw no one other than Crystal. She is by far the second hottest woman here, and if she wasn't mated I would have had my way with her when I first met her. She is wearing a gold and black bikini that left little to the imagination. In all my years that I have walked this earth have I never came across a wolf with silver hair and blue eyes quite like hers, and that made me curious. I have no idea what I will drink for punishment, because everything here is just for wolves and no one knows a vampire's weakness. Okay, this is not going the way I would have wanted it to. Looking before me, I have 2 cups left and Crystal has 4. I mean 4, we only start with 7. She smirked at me and hopped the ball. Great, 1 cup left. I drank the beer and threw the cup down. Remind me to never again in my life drink beer, it is the most disgusting thing I have ever tasted, I thought to myself. I hopped the ball and it was a miss like every other time. Come on, just give up, Julian. Crystal said and licked her lips. If it wasn't for these 2 tight shorts I would have a problem with walking around. What is wrong with me getting aroused by a mated girl? I asked myself and watched as she hopped the last ball. I prayed for it to miss, but no, I didn't. It hopped straight into the cup and cheers erupted around the field. Crystal looked at me and I could see her eyes held mischief in them. She jumped off the beam and ran to the direction of the house. She came out a few minutes later, a little vial in hand, and said, "Seeing as you are not a wolf and wolfsbane won't work on you, I have something special just for you." she said and pulled me off the beam. Her skin looks so soft and I just had to touch it, so I did. I put my hand on her shoulder and spun her around so she could face me. I moved my hand down her arm, rising goosebumps everywhere I touch. I moved my hand down to her hand, and before I could grab the vial she moved it to the other hand, leaning in and saying, "Distracting me might have worked if you didn't look at my hand." She smirked at me and walked off. "Okay, it won't kill you, it will just weaken your alcohol immunity, kind of like what wolfsbane does to wolves, but without the weakness." "Where did you get it?" I asked her with a raised brow. "I have knowledge," she said and looked at me. I don't believe her, because no one knows about this except vampires. We prefer to keep our weaknesses hidden from the world, so how did she know about this? I took one shot and I could feel the drug starting to work, 99 more to go. I looked at her and asked, "Who's gonna put me to bed when I pass out?" I asked and saw her lick her lips. "Don't worry, you will be well taken care of," she said and winked at me. I have 20 shots left and the world is starting to spin. Tracy is standing next to me with her hand on my arm and I wish I could tell her what she is doing to me. I took the last shot and lost control of my emotions for a split second, letting the veil down. I could feel heat sparks on my arm and pulled myself together before she had a chance to really feel them. It's as if everything was happening in slow motion. She pulled her hand back and looked at me, questions in her eyes, and then she lifted her head and smelled the air. I started praying that her Zane was close and I could blame it on him. To my surprise, he was close and I finally had everything back under control again. When Tracy touched my arm again I could feel the sparks, but she couldn't. I took a look around me and said, "I need to sit down." By the looks I got and the way Crystal laughed told me they didn't understand what I'm saying, so I took matters into my own hands and just sat down where I was standing. Okay, sitting wasn't the word, more like falling. I landed on my back looking up at the darkening sky. I can't remember the last time I've had so much fun or the last time I was drunk. Zane POV: by Sunday morning every wolf here couldn't move, let alone walk. We have been up since Wednesday and haven't slept yet, and now we feel like the Walking Dead. We are currently cleaning up and packing everything away, but it is taking forever. Zane, if you are done with the booze then go and help with the snacks table," Kyle said as he walked past me. He has been in his glory since last night because he won the final challenge against Zanan. Last night, after Julian fell down, everyone was laughing so hard that they couldn't even help him up. That was the best thing to see. We have no idea what Crystal gave him, but it worked. When we finally got him into a bed, Kyle came running out screaming he has an idea for a last challenge. "Okay, so this is the game, Hangman," he said, and he was very excited as if he just invented the best game ever. He looked at everyone and no one was stepping up, so he challenged Zanan. "The rules are 1. You are not allowed to cheat, obviously. 2. You are not allowed to ask for help. 3. If you lose, then the loser has to finish all the booze that is left," he said and smirked at Zanan. Zanan looked over at the booze table and saw there was about 1 bottle of everything left, and it came to a total of 7 bottles and 12 beers. Now for a wolf that is nothing, but for a human that would surely kill them. Being the alpha he is, he accepted the challenge and stepped forward. Zanan was on his last try and he still couldn't get the word right. Kyle got his without having to try again, but with Zanan now it's a bit more difficult. "Think, Zanan, think. What starts with C and ends with E?" Kyle asked Zanan, and he just shook his head and said W. Kyle hung his tiny stick man and filled in the missing words. And the word was crocodile. Zanan slapped his forehead and just laughed. He shook Kyle's hand and walked over to the booze table where he started pouring his drinks. Wolves have very high alcohol tolerance, but that amount of alcohol will make even a wolf tipsy if not drunk. By the time he finished drinking he put his glass down and started laughing when he looked up. "Never in my life will I do this again," he said and just fell backwards, landing with a loud oomph on the ground. I ran over to him and he was out cold, I mean he just passed out. Kyle and I carried him to bed where Crystal was already waiting for him. She took off his shoes and shirt and tucked him in. "Hopefully he will just sleep it off. Now everything is done. And I mean everything. It is 5 o'clock in the morning and the people will only be here to pick the stuff up at 6. Most of the people already went home to have a much-needed shower and sleep." After everything was done, Kyle said, "I can go," and that is exactly what I did. I took Tracy's hand and basically ran into the house before he gets something else for me to do. Tracy showered and I showered after her, and then I fell into a dreamless sleep holding my mate. Tracy POV. This was fun, being able to just let go and let loose. I think this is what everyone needed, especially with everything that is going on. As I lie here in bed I can't help but think about Julian and what I felt when I touched him. It is not the first time I feel the sparks, but when I touch him for a second time it's gone. I know we share a connection, but how deep does that connection go? Zayn was snoring in my ear and I can't believe how much I have missed this, but I have this need to be close to Julian. I got out of bed softly and slowly, trying not to wake Zayn, and sneaked out of the room. I walked down to Julian's room, which is right next to ours. I open the door slowly and see him still passed out on the bed. I walked over to him standing next to his bed looking down at him. I can't believe how much he has changed since the last time I saw him. He has more muscles now and he has new tattoos. I looked closely at his back and saw he changed the rose. A red balloon is tied to the top of the rose with an anchor grounding it. I have no idea what it means, but the way he had it done looks amazing. He moved and I jumped back. "Are you just gonna stare at me or are you getting in?" he asked in a thick sleepy voice. I looked at him and saw he is now looking at me. His eyes looks a bit dilated and I realized he must be hungry. I left the room and went to fetch a blood bag, coming back and handing it to him. He looked at me puzzled, then asked, "How did you know?" "Your eyes," I said and sat down on the bed across from him. He drank the blood and I took the bag from him. He looks much better now and he doesn't look drunk anymore. "How are you feeling?" I asked, looking at his chest, remembering all the time I would lie down next to him and trace every tattoo with my finger. He sat up and moved closer to me, taking my chin and lifting my eyes so that I could look at him. Before I could make a move, his lips came down on mine in a needy hot kiss. It wasn't rough, but it wasn't gentle either. My mind told me to push him or slap him or do something, but my heart and body knew this is what it wants. I moaned into his mouth and moved closer to him until I was straddling his hips, deepening the kiss. I raked my hands over his arms and into his hair. I pulled and he gasped, giving me access to slip my tongue into his mouth. It's like my body was starving and he is somehow feeding it, and the weird part is I feel exactly the same when I kiss Zayn. OMG Zayn! I broke the kiss and jumped off the bed, practically running out of his room. I stood in the hallway trying to catch my breath and fighting back tears. How can I forget about Zayn? I asked myself as I make my way to the room, throwing the empty blood bag in the dustbin. I saw that Zayn is still sleeping and crawled back into bed. He threw his arm around me and pulled me snug against him. I have never in my life slept as bad as I did tonight. "Julian POV, why don't you just tell her and then she won't feel so bad every time she kisses you or comes close to you?" I asked myself, looking at the door that Tracy ran out of. I am starting to regret agreeing to see her when she just showed up out of the blue. I have never had to fight my own feelings like this before, and every minute I spent with her just makes me fall for her even more. And the worst part is not being able to tell her. I groaned and fell back onto the bed. I have no idea what Crystal put in that drinks, but I will never challenge her again. Today is supposed to be a resting day, but I don't feel like resting. I thought about what Tracy has told me and everything that is going on in the Lost Prince werewolf baby that has finally been found, except he is not a baby anymore. I get why he wants to do this. I mean, I would do exactly the same thing if the tables were turned. Werewolves are the most possessive and proud species out of all the species. Tracy said that Crystal is a fox, and now I'm curious because I haven't seen a fox in a very long time. I got out of bed and looked down at myself. I am still wearing the shorts from yesterday and I have no clothes with me, so I can't even take a shower. As I walk around the grounds, the sun is high in the sky and it is quiet. There is no sign that there even was a party. Everything has been cleaned up and cleared out. Hey! You are up! I heard a soft voice behind me and turned around, coming face to face with Crystal. I can't sleep anymore and I was just thinking about going for a hunt, I said and looked at her. She is dressed in an oversized t-shirt that falls to the middle of her thighs. My mind drifted back to how she looked in that gold and black bikini and how soft her skin felt under my touch. Well, I was about to have a run. If you want, you can join me, she said, and I know it is an innocent invitation, but I can't help the thoughts going through my head. Sure. You can lead the way, I said and watched as she walked off. I heard bones creaking and I couldn't help but flinch at the sound. Minutes later she came out and my breath didn't just hitch, it stopped completely. Throughout my life I have seen many wolves and I have heard many stories about the white wolf, but I have never seen one until today. I stood there staring at thing magnificent beast open-mouthed. She is standing taller than me and get this, her eyes are two different colors. I thought you are supposed to be a fox, I said before I could stop myself. I am, and I'm a wolf too, hence the two different eyes. Okay, so we can communicate because I happen to have a mind-reading gift and right now I am very glad of it. Okay, so where are we going? I asked her and saw the surprise in her eyes. You can hear me? She asked in awe. I chuckled at her, burning to run my hands through her fur. Yes, I can read minds, but don't worry, your secrets is safe with me, I said and winked at her. I think if a wolf could blush she would be red as a tomato. She took off towards the woods and said, keep up if you can. I smiled at that and took off behind her. About 20 minutes later I finally caught up to her and said, you are really fast for a wolf. She just laughed and ran even faster, if that is possible. She was finally slowing down and came to a stop, looking at me, seeing that I am right behind her. She walked through the tress looking back to see if I am still following her. When I walked past the trees I stood looking around in pure amazement. The field looks beautiful, covered in wild flowers with a small waterfall in the beck. This is where Zanan and I had our first date, S.E. said, and I could hear in her voice how much she loves him. She walked back into the woods and when she came out she was in human form, wearing a black shirt and short shorts. She linked in with me and pulled me toward the waterfall. We spent so much time talking that by the end of the day I practically knew everything about her and she knew just enough about me. So where is your mate? She asked, catching me completely off guard. I looked at her and said, she died during our mating process. Her body was too weak, so it rejected my mark, I said, remembering that day as if it was yesterday. How long ago? Just over 300 years ago, I said, and saw the shock on her face. Just out of curiosity, how old are you? She asked and smiled at me. I would be a fool for saying no to that smile, so I just said, I'm 1,600 years old. She gasped and covered her mouth. I get this reaction a lot when they find out how old I really am, and in human years I don't look a day over 30. Zanan POV, the last 4 days was fun and all, but now it is time to get real. As I lay here in bed with Crystal, who is still fast asleep, by the way, I think of everything I have to do today. Julian and I have to talk, and I have to be on the training field, but I think Tracy can handle training for today and I will fall in tomorrow. I moved closer to Crystal and started drawing circles on her back. It's time to wake up, love, I said and kissed her cheek. I got out of bed and went to take a shower. These last 4 days has definitely left a mark and I won't be touching alcohol anytime soon. I didn't even know a wolf can drink and pass out. After my shower I went back into the room and saw Crystal has left. My thought wasn't even cold yet when she came back in with the girls, one on each hip. I walked closer, kissing each girl on the forehead, and then my mate. Hazel opened her arms for me and I took her from Crystal. Don't tell anyone, but you are my favorite, I whispered into her ear and listened as she began laughing. I will see you downstairs and then we will have the meeting with Julian and Tyler when you are ready, I told her and handed back Hazel. Take them down with you, I will be there in 20 minutes. Crystal said and gave me Isabella. I took both girls down, whispering sweet nothings at them until they were laughing so hard they were snorting. What is going on here? I asked when I came into the kitchen. It was a total mess and Zane stood there covered in flour. I have to say he doesn't look happy. The cupboard was booby-trapped and when I opened it a whole bag of flour came down on me, he said, and I could have almost laughed at his expression if I wasn't as shocked as I am. This has gone too far. Booby traps, really? What was in that cupboard that you wanted? I asked, raising a brow. He just looked down without answering and I knew it was something that doesn't belong to him. It's you, you are the thief, Crystal said, coming in and stepping around me. And all this time you were playing the innocent little boy knowing that I don't have proof. Well, now I do, she said and looked at me. Zane here has been stealing the girls' porridge, especially the chocolate one. And when I asked he lied to my face. I looked at Zane and decided Crystal can handle him and left the kitchen. I walked into the yard and saw most of the wolves already warming up for training. I caught sight of Delia sitting on the grass with Leo and Tristan. Walking over to her, I put down the girls and asked her just to watch them for me for a little while and then I left. Zanan, wait up, I heard Tracy and stopped. What's up? I asked. Julian said I should tell you he will be back in a little while, he just went for a hunt, Tracy said, and I couldn't help but notice the flush in her cheeks when she said his name. It's none of your business, Zanan, I scolded myself before asking a question that would get me slapped. Okay, when he comes back just send him up to my office, I will wait there, I said and walked off. Tracy POV: when something so wrong feels so right, is it really so wrong? I mean, yes, I have a mate, but I have a pull towards Julian and I can't explain it. When I kissed him, why didn't Zane wake up? Why wasn't he in pain? He was supposed to feel something, even just a little, but no, he didn't feel anything. When I saw Julian with Crystal I got jealous, because it hurts seeing him with other females. I groaned and started running faster. This run is doing nothing but give me more time to think. I wanted to clear my head, not think more. Okay, everyone gather up, I heard Tommy calling. I ran back to the field, falling into the circle. I spotted Zanan and ran over to him. I know he saw something on my face because I saw the questions swimming in his eyes. Please don't ask anything, please just act like you didn't see anything. Please, I silently pleaded, and he didn't ask or say anything. Instead he just walked away. I fell back into the circle as Tommy began speaking. So everyone knows that training will be different from today? From today on I will no longer be your trainer, I will be a trainee like you. Tracy and Zanan will become the trainers. If we work together and we work hard, then training won't be so brutal. If not, well, I sure hope there will be enough hot water to soothe your aching muscles. Tommy walked over to me and we switched places. I took my place in the center of the circle and began speaking. As you all know, royal wolves are very highly trained, so they will calculate your next move before you have even thought about it. That is what makes them so good. Now I will teach you everything I know, and then you will team up with sparring partners so that I can see how much work still needs to be done. The most important thing about fighting is, find a technique that works for you. No one will have the same techniques. Keep your breathing even and don't think too hard. Breath control gives you more control over your movements and it increases your stamina. I spent the rest of the day teaching techniques, finding out who is comfortable with what. I took the wolves who has strength and put them one side, the ones with speed another side, the practical ones, and then you get the angry ones. I split them all up, making groups of 4. Each and every wolf here brings a skill that can be of use. By 1 o'clock we were all starving. Training stopped so that everyone can have something to eat. I was just about to walk into the house when Maggie stopped me and chased me out. Like literally, she chased me out. I stood there not sure what is going on when she came back carrying a huge tray of sandwiches. I offered to help and she let me, going back to fetch another one. If only O could eat this, I thought to myself and licked my lips. We carried the food to one of the outside tables and went back to fetch the cold drinks, and when Maggie came back she handed me a white cup and said, "I didn't forget about you, honey." I went and got some blood from Jeff. I took the cup and felt it was lukewarm, just the way I like it. I took a sip and moaned at the taste. How come it never tastes this good when I do it? I asked as soon as I could speak. Maggie just looked at me and shook her head. Julian POV: I have no desire to read anyone's thoughts, but it isn't something I can just switch on and off whenever I feel like it. I just don't concentrate on it. Knowing what everyone thinks is kind of disturbing, especially since I came here. Some of these she-wolves has no shame, like none at all. The thoughts that goes through their minds are very unsettling. When I came back from hunting I saw Tracy training the wolves and I couldn't help but stare. Every move she makes is so elegant and flawless, it's almost like she is floating. She had every male there mesmerized and all eyes glued on her, mine as well. I looked up at the house and saw Zanan standing by his office window looking down at the training field. I knocked on Zanan's office door and waited. "Just a second," Zanan said, and I waited. A minute or so later he opened the door and looked at me. "Welcome back, how was the hunt?" he asked and opened the door so I could come in. "Fulfilling, thank you," I said and took a seat opposite him. Tracy told me what is going on and I had no idea, I said and saw Zanan exhale. "I'm glad you are filled in," Zanan said and gave a half smile. "I'm here to help. I can have more or less 4,000 vampires here whenever you need them. We will need all the help we can get, but I don't want to cause more trouble than there already is. Everyone knows that vampires and wolves doesn't get along, let alone fight together," Zanan said, and he made a valid point. "Well, I don't live under the same rules as everyone else, and as for my coven, their loyalty is with me, and if I talk they listen. Kind of like your pack here. I would appreciate the help," Zanan said and sat back in his chair. When he looked at me he didn't have to ask what he is thinking because I already knew. Tracy and I know each other for a very long time. She was my first love and then I found my mate. She died during the mating process and it was too late for me. Tracy already left. We haven't seen each other in over 300 years, and when she showed up at my gate, guess what? I found that she is my mate only to learn she is marked by another. I said, and it all came out faster than I would have liked, but by the look on Zanan's face he seemed to have heard everything. Wait, back up. How is that possible? Tracy is Zane's mate, how can she be yours?" Zanan asked, looking as confused as I am. I don't know, bust she doesn't know. She only knows she is attracted to me and it's getting stronger by the day. I said and rubbed my hands over my face. Does Zane know? Zanan asked. No, no one knows and no one will find out, at least not now. I will keep it hidden and you will too. I said, looking at Zanan pleadingly. Okay, fine, but I don't want drama, I have enough on my plate. Zanan said, and I could understand how he is feeling. Just please don't tell anyone, not even Crystal, because I have no idea how close she is with Tracy. I won't say anything, in fact this has nothing to do with me, so you can handle your own business and I'll pretend you never said anything. Zanan said and looked at me. I have no idea what emotion is behind his eyes and I didn't have time to ask. A knock came on the door, but not the same one I walked into. I looked at Zanan confused and he just looked at me. Okay, please don't freak out and don't kill it. He said and got up from the chair. I looked at him confused and realized he said it. What is it? I watched as he walked over to the bookcase and pushed it away, revealing a small door. When the door opened, my eyes almost popped out of my sockets. I sat there dumbfounded and shocked, I couldn't even utter a word. I looked up at Zanan and down at the creature again. Does Zanan even know what he has? I wondered as I looked down and nodded my head. I only had to say one word and Zanan snapped his head up, looking at me questioningly. Spike. I said and saw him smile. Julian POV. I realize Zanan is staring at me like I've grown 2 heads, but I don't care. The only thing I care about is seeing Spike alive and well. It's been years and years since I've seen him though they got to him too. I look over his tiny figure and see he doesn't have a scratch on him. Spike. I said, but it came out more like a question. He looked between me and Zanan for a second as if asking permission for something, and then he just walked over to me, getting onto the chair next to mine. I saw his struggle for a second before he was finally on. He looked at me and I could see the millions of questions behind his eyes, but he voices none. I thought you died, we both said simultaneously, looking at each other. I did, but I didn't. I told Spike, seeing his confusion. So I explained to him what happened and how I'm still alive. What happened to you? I was found by a wolf and brought here to another wolf, just a crazier one who was insane and scary sometimes. And now here I am. Spike said, looking over at Zanan. How do you know each other? Zanan asked, and I almost felt sorry for how confused he looks. Spike shook his head lightly and looked at Zanan. You might want to have a seat. Spike said, and Zanan moved to sit down. How much of history do you know? He asked Zanan. Not much, but I know enough. Why? Zanan asked and looked at me. Well, you see, I lied to you. Spike said, and he really looked guilty. What do you mean, lied about what? Zanan asked. I am not a mixed breed, I am a gargoyle. We have been sent here as a gift to the royal families of every species from the moon goddess. I was part of Julian's family when they were still royalty. We were to keep the peace and warn them of any danger that is coming. One of our own started the war between vampires and wolves because he was power-hungry and greedy. We all came with our own set of gifts that makes us special. For instance, I can see the past, present, and future. The one that started the war had the power of magic and manipulation. He used it for the wrong reasons, and when the war was won we were hunted down, every last one of us. I made it out hid under water for years, only coming up to eat, and that is how Donovan found me and brought me here, promising me safety. I just didn't know I will be stepping into another war. So I lied and said I am a mixed breed. As soon as Spike was done talking, he just looked over at Zanan, who has been very quiet this whole time. Zanan finally looked up and said, So you have been lying to me, he said and got up from his chair walking over to the window. I had to. I don't want to get involved in a war that is the reason I am the only one of my kind left. Zanan. Just try and see it from my point of view. Spike pleaded. Well, at least now I know, what else is there? Zanan asked sarcastically. I could punch him for how he is acting, and especially towards Spike, who has done nothing but protect himself. Crystal knew. Spike said, and that caused Zanan's head to snap up. Crystal knew. Zanan asked, making sure he heard right. She figured it out and I had to tell her. Spike said. Zanan POV. Standing in my office, I feel like an outsider looking at Spike and Julian. Not only do they know each other, they used to live together, and get this, Julian used to be royalty. I stood there not knowing what to say or do, but when he said Crystal knew, that got my attention. How did she figure it out, Spike? I asked, and I know I'm sounding rude, but my own maid has been lying to me even after we tried figuring out what Spike might be. We spoke when Delia was in the hospital giving birth, and she asked me directly, so I couldn't lie. Spike said, and I did the calculations. We were still trying to figure Spike out until a few days ago. I looked at Spike, and before I could say something there was a knock on the door. Come in. I said, not bothering to ask who it is. Crystal came in, looking at Julian and Spike, then at me. She walked over to me and tried to kiss me, but I turned my head and gave her my cheek. She looked at me for a second and turned to speak to Julian. Tracy said she left blood in your room for you. Crystal said, and then looked at me again. Who spat in your coffee? She asked me. You knew what Spike is and didn't tell me, but instead watching me going through every book trying to figure it out, she formed an O with her mouth and moved her head at me. Zanan, he asked me not to say anything, so yes, I knew and I didn't tell you. Julian got up from his chair and excused himself, and did Spike. He went back through his door, closing it behind him. Zanan, why are you actually mad at me? Crystal asked, crossing her arms under her chest. You lied to me when I asked you, do you know what he can be? I said, and went on, what else are you hiding? I asked her, knowing I have just opened a can of worms. I could see her ears going red, and they only do that when she is mad. Zanan, I can't tell you every thought that pops into my head, and I cannot tell you everything I know all the time. I know we are mates, so why can't you trust me? She asked me. This is not about trust, Crystal. You lied to me, and now I can't help but wonder what else you are lying about. So what is it? I asked her, walking closer until I was standing over her. Zanan, don't, was all she said, and turned around, walking away from me. I grabbed her wrist and pulled her back. Zanan, let go of me. Crystal said, trying to free her wrist. Not until you tell me what else you are hiding. I said, and watched her struggle. You really want to know? Fine. She said, and pulled her hand free. Where do I even begin? I have been having dreams about woman waking up and I'm soaking. I wish I could be a vampire just for the fun of it. I wonder what it would feel like to be a man for a day. I keep thinking about all the woman you had with and what you thought about. Ah, and the latest one, I'm attracted to Julian for some unknown reason. So there you go, Zanan, are you happy now? She asked me and walked out of my office, slamming the door behind her. Crystal POV. I am done with female training for the day and decided to spend some time with my girls and Delia. I walked over to where she was sitting and fell down beside her. Hazel came crawling over to me, and I watched in amazement on how fast they are growing. They are only 5 months old and they are already crawling. Hazel is the feisty one and a daddy's girl, whereas Isabella is quieter and she is more a mommy's girl. She loves Zanan, but she loves me more. Looks like you could use a hot bath and a nice massage. Delia said, smirking at me. She is like the only one immune to Julian's charms, like he doesn't affect her one bit. I was about to get us when I saw Tracy running over to us. She looks flushed and sweaty and she looks like she can use a hot bath. Can you please tell Julian I put blood in his room for him, animal blood won't keep him full. Tracy asked and I nodded my head getting up from the ground. I want to go see Zanan too. I have been getting mixed emotions through the mate bond for a while now, so I want to see if he is okay. I made my way to his office and when I knocked he just said, "Come in," which is strange because usually he asks who it is or he opens the door. I walked in and saw Spike sitting with Julian and then I walked over to Zanan. I tried kissing him, but he just turned his head giving me his cheek. I turned and told Julian what Tracy told me and looked at Zanan. I walked out of the office feeling angry and to make my point I slammed the door. I took a deep breath and when I looked up I saw a smiling Julian. He took a step closer to me and said, "Too bad you have a mate." I started at him in confusion and then I realized he must have heard what I said. Great, now I have no secret and he knows. I looked at him and smiled. "Yeah, well, I'll take my chances," I said, knowing that Zanan can hear me. His office door opened and a very mad-looking Zanan came out, or should I say Blaze. When I looked at him his eyes are pitch black. "You will never touch what is mine," he said and walked closer to Julian. I tried pulling him back but he just shook my hand off. I jumped in front of him, now standing between him and Julian. "Get out of the way, Crystal," Blaze said and took another step. "No," I said and saw his eyes drop for a second before he got this murderous look on his face. Julian stepped around me and stood in front of Zanan in a challenging stance. I felt my eyes change and knew that Roxy and Raven is on the surface. I growled at the two of them, but the pitch was so low that they had to cover their ears. When I thought they had enough I stopped growling and looked at them. When Julian looked at me he gasped and I know it's because of my eyes. I looked at Zanan and he is back to normal now. When I keep something from you it is for good reason, so now that you know if you touch so much as a hair on Julian's body you will find yours broken in more than one way, I said to Zanan, and all he did was lower his head, exposing his neck. "I think you should go outside and get some air," I told Julian and followed behind him. When I got outside my body was shaking with anger and Roxy was fighting to come out. I gave up and gave in to the shifting into Roxy. Everyone stopped what they were doing and stared at me. Julian POV, I know it was wrong to stand and listen, but I couldn't help it. I was curious to know who'll win. Crystal doesn't look like the pushover kind of girl. When I heard what she said to him I was silently laughing. At first I thought it was just to hurt him, but when she came out and looked at me I knew it wasn't just to hurt him, she really is attracted to me and it's a mutual feeling. When Zanan came out he came straight for me. I was ready knowing I can take him, but I wouldn't hurt Crystal that way or anyone else. Crystal jumped in front of me trying to calm him, but he wanted nothing of it, so I stepped around her and up to him knowing I might be playing with fire. I was just about to say something when my ears started to hurt. I covered them and saw Zanan doing the same. "What is this?" I asked myself, trying not to hunch over in pain. When it finally stopped I looked up at Crystal and gasped at the color of her eyes. They were a mixture of blue and green with a deep purple lining. When she spoke I felt like submitting to her. When I saw Zanan submit I smirked and thought that he as a future king is submitting to his mate more than half his size. When she looked at me my smile died. I could see her hands trembling and knew she will either shift or she will rip one of us apart, but instead she told me to go outside and she followed me. When we got outside she lost her cool, her body began shaking and I could see her eyes changing from blue to green to purple. I was about to step up to her to ask if she is okay when I heard the tearing of fabric and all I could do was stand and stare in amazement. I have seen foxes before but never in this color or this height. They are usually brown or white and brown, I have never in my life seen a midnight purple fox standing as tall as a normal alpha wolf. I was still staring in amazement and then she just vanished, and I mean she vanished. She was nowhere to be seen. Crystal POV, did you see that? See? Roxy asked, and I could feel and hear her excitement. I wish I was there so I could see his face. Never mind him, Roxy, I have a mate. I said. Yes, I know, but I am attracted to Julian. Roxy said in a low voice, pulling her ears against her head. When we teleported away from home we came to where we had our first date. The water is so clear that I can see my reflection. That is the only thing I did for the first 10 minutes when I got here. Roxy doesn't like Zanan much for how he treated me in the beginning, and now she is trying to make a connection with Julian. You can't have Julian, Roxy, because he has another mate out there somewhere, and besides we have Zanan. I said, and she just huffed at me. I could feel sadness wash over me, and I have never thought this could be possible. Every book I have ever read about foxes said that they don't have emotions, but that is not true. I was lying on the grass with my head in my paws when I heard a twig snap. I jumped up and took a fighting stance, ready to jump on anyone trying to sneak up on me. When I looked over at the woods I could see Julian walking towards me with his hands raised. How did he know where I'll be? I asked myself, staring at him in wonder as he walked closer. He was dressed in dark blue jeans and a white shirt, and his hair is messy, probably from the run. In his other hand he was holding a dark blue shirt and it looked huge. When he was close enough, Roxy pushed me back and took control. She walked over to Julian and rubbed against him as if wanting to mark him with her scent. Julian just chuckled and ran his hand through her fur, making her shiver. We need to talk, he said, and let his hand fall against his side. Looking at me he looks sad, but why? Can you shift? He asked, and I shook my head no, because I didn't bring any clothes. He laughed at me and said, I figured so I brought you one. And he showed me the shirt, putting it in front of me and turning his back. When I was sure he wouldn't peek I quickly shifted and threw the shirt on. This isn't Zanan's shirt, I said, and looked at Julian. When he turned around he was smirking. No, it's mine. I thought you can have it, seeing as there are wolves on the front. I looked down at the picture and true, there were 4 wolves standing on a cliff howling at the full moon. What do you want to talk about? He sat down on the grass and patted the space next to him so that I can sit down. I sat down next to him and he began speaking. I know now that you are as attracted to me as I am to you, but nothing can be done about it. He said and looked at me pleadingly, almost like he wants nothing to happen, but secretly wishes for something to happen. I know. I have a mate to which I am mated, and I have 2 beautiful girls, besides it's not me who is attracted to you, it's my fox Roxy. I said, and I wish I didn't say anything because now I can see the questions behind his eyes. How is that even possible? He asked, and I could see amusement behind his eyes. I laid my head in my hands, trying to figure out a way to explain without making Zanan look bad. Don't think so hard, just explain it to me, he said, and now his whole body is turned towards me and is playing with a flower. I explained some of it, only the pieces that involved Roxy and why she is now looking for a mate in someone else, not so much for me and Raven, but for her. Someone she can call her own. I looked at Julian and saw him smiling. I'm flattered that she thought it could be me, but I found my second chance and I'll be damned if I let her get away for the second time. She just doesn't know yet, I will tell her when all this is over. Julian said, and I could see the love in his eyes as he spoke, and then something clicked. Tracy, I whispered and saw his shocked expression. At first he wanted to deny it, but I held up my hand, stopping him. How did you know? He asked, looking defeated. I'm good at figuring things out, and if you look close enough you can see everything, I said, and took his hand in mine. I won't tell anyone, besides it's not my story to tell. He looked at me and smiled, then leaned in and kissed my cheek. I smiled at him and then I became serious. How did you find me? I asked him and saw his expression changed. Well, I spoke to Zanan and he told me all the places you could be and I figured you would be here. He said and shrugged his shoulders. I looked at him and started getting you from the ground. Well, I have to go back seeing as I need to clear up some things, so you coming? I asked him and watched as he stood up. I licked my lips and looked at his face. When you look at me like that it would make keeping my hands off you a bit harder. He said and took a step closer to me. I was fighting with Roxy because she wants control. When he laid his hand on my cheek and rubbed circles, I lost the fight against Roxy and Julian's lips came down onto mine. I couldn't do anything except wait for them to finish, and then Roxy is going back into the box, because how will I be able to explain this to Zanan? What if he feels something? I started pushing at the wall and finally got through, but it was too late. The kiss was so heated that I started feeling uncomfortable. I tried pushing Roxy back but she wouldn't budge, so I just waited. It feels like I am violating her privacy and I do not like it one bit because it is my body. Julian Povey was still standing looking around for Crystal, but she is gone. Zanan came out behind me and at first I thought he's going to punch me by the way he balled his fist, but he exhaled and unclenched his fist, holding his hand out to me. I take it a bit hesitantly and shake. "I'm sorry," he said, and I almost choked on my spit. Never in my life have I heard an alpha apologize, and certainly not the future king. They are way too proud. "Don't worry about it, but I do need to speak to Crystal and clear up some things," I said and saw understanding in Zanan's eyes. He told me 3 places where she might be and I knew where she is. She told me it's her favorite place. I waited for Tracy to finish up because I needed her to teleport me home so I can get a few things, and one being clean clothes. I have no problem wearing Zanan's clothes, but he does smell like a wet dog and I have no desire to smell like him. I sat on the grass with Delia, whom I have met this morning only. She is very friendly and bubbly. I met Crystal's girls and Delia's boys. Looking at them I thought about having kids of my own one day and looked up to Tracy and wonder how many kids will she want? She looked up and caught me staring, to which she just grinned and continued training. When she was done she walked over to me with Zane following on her heels. She fell down on the grass, resting her head on my lap. I looked up to find Zane staring at me, but I couldn't quite make out the emotion behind his eyes. "How was training?" I asked just to make light conversation. Tracy looked at me and said, "Do you have to ask?" I smiled at her and said, "I need you to take me home. I have to get some clothes, please." She exhaled loudly and got up from the ground, pulling me up with her. I have forgotten how strong she is and was amazed by it once again. She looked at Zane and said, "I will be right back, please fix me a hot bath." She walked over and kissed him and then she took my hand and teleported us to my house. A second later, when I opened my eyes, I was in my living room looking at the familiar paintings. "It truly is amazing what you can do," I said and made my way upstairs with her following behind me. "Yeah, it is, but not as cool as reading minds though," Tracy said and half smiled at me. "Years ago when we were still dating I taught her how to close her mind off from me, and I guess it's something she never forgot because not once have I been able to hear what she is thinking." I grabbed some clothes and when I turned around I caught Tracy staring at me, but she was so lost in thought that she didn't see me come closer. When I was in front of her I rubbed my thumb over her cheek, bringing her back into reality. She sucked in a breath and stopped breathing altogether. "Julian, we can't," she started saying, but I crushed my lips to hers, not giving her a chance to finish her sentence. I let go of the bag, letting it drop to the floor, and put my one hand on her waist, pulling her snug against me, letting head know and feel what she does to me. I out my other hand behind her head holding her in place and deepened the kiss, hearing her gasp as I run my tongue across her bottom lip. She denied me entrance, so I grabbed her and squeezed hard. When she gasped, I took the opportunity and slipped my tongue into her mouth, and the fight for dominance began. She wasn't rejecting me, nor was she giving in. We don't need to breath, so I can keep doing this until she just gives in, and gave in she did. I could feel her body leaning into mine as she stopped holding back, and the soft moans coming from her didn't do anything to calm me. Instead, it just made me more hard and made me want to take her right here right now, but I can never do that to her. I broke the kiss and stepped back, looking into her lust-filled eyes and swollen lips. I rubbed my thumb over her lips and said, "Soon it will all make sense." She looked at me confused and then said, "Let's go back." I picked up my bag and took her hand, and we were gone once again. When we go to the pack house, SE practically ran away from me and into the house. Using my vampire speed, I went to put my bag down, grabbed the first shirt I saw and ran to find Crystal. When I found her, I was once again amazed by her beauty, or should I say the beauty of her fox. Everything about her screams power and strength, and her eyes truly are magnificent. I could stare into them the whole day and not bother about time. When we spoke, I could see understanding in her eyes, but also sadness. Why would she be sad? She is supposed to be happy. She has a mate and they are mated and she wears his mark, so why is she sad? I asked myself and soon found out. Everything makes sense now. I'm not attracted to Crystal but her fox, only because she is trying to form a connection with me. How is that even possible? I asked myself. When I saw Crystal's eyes change between their normal blue and purple, I knew Roxy was fighting for control. If I don't do this, I will regret it for the rest of my life, I thought as I walked closer to her and sealed our lips together. At first she was still, didn't even move, so I moved closer and pulled her body against mine. I kissed her like she is the air I need to breathe, with urgency I have never felt before, not even when I kissed Tracy. I could feel Crystal's body relax and fall into mine, fitting perfectly. I dragged my hand through her hair, breaking the kiss just for a second, and stared into the beautiful purple eyes I have ever seen. Beautiful. I whispered and kissed her again. This time she was kissing me back with just as much urgency. When my skin came in contact with hers, sparks lit up between us and we both gasped. I pulled away and just stared at her, knowing she felt it too. To test the theory, I laid my hand on her arm and I could feel sparks everywhere I touch. When she looked at me again, her eyes were blue, and I know Crystal has control again. I looked at her and she mirrored my expression, shock and confusion. Before she could say anything, I left using vampire speed. What is going on? I asked myself as I run with no destination in my head. Zanan POV: submitting to Crystal was the hardest thing I have ever done. I was ready to rip Julian's head off when I heard what he had to say. Who does he think he is to say something like that to my mate? I am angry at Crystal for saying what she said, and now I can't get it out of my head. I'm attracted to Julian, she said, and stormed out of my office, leaving me stunned and hurt. Why would she be attracted to another man when she has my mark? I asked myself. I realize I was wrong to press her into telling me everything, but I don't know if she was telling the truth or just said that things to hurt me. Either way, she did her job and I am hurt. I saw the way she looked at Julian and didn't miss the jump in her heartbeat, and neither did I miss the way she looks at him whenever he is in the room. When he asked me if I know where she might be, I knew they will be alone, but I trust Crystal and I know she wouldn't deliberately hurt me or do something to hurt herself. I walked past the kitchen and spotted Delia, so I turned around and walked into the kitchen, taking a seat behind the counter. Delia, have you seen Crystal? I asked, watching her make a sandwich as if it is the most interesting thing in the world. When she looked up, I realized she looks tired. She actually has dark circled under her eyes. No, I haven't. The last time I saw her was when she left a few hours ago. Delia said and smiled softly at me. I was about to get up when I thought of something. What do you think about Julian? I asked her and watched her reaction. He's cool, kind of mysterious but cool. Why, she looks so calm when she said that, I had to ask. So you don't feel attracted to him? I asked her and received a look that could have put me 6 feet under. She dusted her hands and wiped the counter, then looked at me. No, I'm not, and if this had anything to with the fight you and Crystal had, then wait for her to come back. Delia said and walked over to me. She laid her hand on my shoulder and gave it a reassuring squeeze. Crystal loves you, Zanan, and she loves her daughters. I don't think she would do anything to ruin that. Delia said and walked out. When she left, I sat in the kitchen for a while longer. I started feeling strange. I shook my head thinking it would go away, but the feeling just increased, spreading from my stomach throughout my whole body. It feels like 1,000 small fairies were set free under my skin. It doesn't itch and it doesn't hurt, but it tingles. Almost like the feeling when mates touch. I snapped my head up and ran out of the kitchen. When I got outside, I saw Crystal walking and she looks angry. Not just angry, but ready to explode. I took in her appearance and saw she is wearing just a shirt and it's not even mine. I walked closer to her and growled when I caught Julian's scent on the shirt. When she looked up at me, her eyes were dark, and I mean murderously dark. He held up her hand and cut me off. I tried speaking to her, but she just kept on walking. I followed behind her and saw her chasing everyone out of the house. I have seen her mad before, but I have never seen her this mad. Crystal POV. After Julian just ran off and left me there speechless and very confused, I started getting angry. I walked home not bothering to shift, and the more I think, the angrier I got. He had no right to kiss me. I am angry at him, and I'm angry at Roxy for complicating my life even more when it's already complicated enough. What was the sparks about, and why did he just leave? I had only one goal, and that was to get answers, and I know just who to speak to. I don't know if Zanan felt anything, and if he did, he better not start with me. A half hour later, I walk into the pack territory and walk straight to the house. Zanan came out and growled at me, and when I looked up at him, he was staring at the shirt I'm wearing. I put my hand up and stopped him before I do something I will regret. I walked past him and into the house, chasing everyone out. I don't want anyone in my business, and certainly not Zane or Tracy. I know Zanan has been following me, so I left him because he needs to hear this as well. I walk up the stairs into Zanan's office. When I opened the door, Spike was already there waiting. When he saw me, he gave a sigh and said, "I will tell you what you want to know." He looked over at Zanan and then at me as if asking if I'm sure he should be here. I walked in and closed the door behind me. I didn't feel like sitting down, so I just stood there looking at Spike. "How is this possible?" I asked, and he knows exactly what I'm talking about. "Your fox rejected Zanan as her mate, so she formed a connection with Julian. When your fox kissed him, they basically sealed the bond, but that could only happen if the feeling is mutual, which I guess it was. That is why you felt the sparks, and you will keep feeling them because he is your mate." Zanan roared out in rage and looked at me. He was about to storm out when Spike stopped him and said, "When a fox mate, they mate for life, and the minute you hurt Crystal, Roxy rejected you. Crystal and Raven is your mate, but Julian is Roxy's mate. Now that they have kissed, the bond will only grow stronger, and there is nothing either of you can do about it." "What about Tracy?" Zanan asked and spun around looking at Spike. "The spark they share will die in time. As for Roxy is stronger, and she already claimed her mate," Spike said and looked at me. "You cannot reject him, Crystal. It would be like losing a mate, and your fox will die if she doesn't. Then she'll be heartless and cold. She will become like the foxes who were hunted down. You share a body, and only you can make a decision. How will this even work? I asked, throwing my hands in the air. You are two different species, each one has a mate. It is very rare for someone like you to have only one mate. Raven chose Blaze and now Roxy chose Julian. What will happen if she rejects him? Zanan asked and Spike repeated himself. Roxy will die and so will a part of Crystal and Raven. They are one Zanan and you have to accept that. I watched as Zanan opened the door about to walk out. Zanan, please, I said, and my voice came out so soft and pleading that he turned and looked at me. You want him? Well, you can have him, Crystal. Zanan said, and a pain hit my chest, making me crumble to the floor, screaming out in pain. Spike jumped off the chair, running to my side. I saw Zanan come back and looking at Spike. She needs a hospital, Spike said and looked at me. I could taste iron in my mouth and I think my nose is leaking. What is happening to her? I heard Zanan shout. The bond is breaking and it will kill her. Zanan, you have to accept her and Julian. Like it or not, you are bonded now, so if you want her to die then fine. Spike said and stepped back, looking at me, giving me a sad smile. Close your eyes, honey, and sleep. It will be over soon. Spike said and Zanan growled. When he growled, the room shook. Zanan Black, accept Crystal as my mate and Julian as her mate. Zanan said and darkness overtook me. Julian POV, I know I'm a coward for running away from her, but nothing makes sense anymore. Everything is so confusing. I was just sitting on a cliff looking down at the ocean when I started feeling angry and confused. Knowing it isn't my emotions, I started heading back. I saw Crystal walking into the house and waited. I know where she is going. I jumped onto the roof and went to sit right above Zanan's office. I know I won't be welcomed in, but I also need answers and I need to understand. I listened to what was said and I felt even more confused. I heard Crystal's pleading voice just before a pain hit my chest and literally knocked the breath out of me. I hissed out in pain and clutched my chest. What is happening? I asked and received no answer. When I listened again, I heard Spike say she'll die. I tried ignoring the pain in my chest and got off the roof. I walked into the house and stumbled my way up the stairs. I didn't bother knocking on the door and just opened it. When I saw Crystal lying on the floor, blood running from her nose and mouth, my world stopped. I fell down next to her and picked her up, looking at Zanan and Spike. She needs a hospital, Spike said and looked at me. Zanan stepped forward and said, I will take her. I handed him Crystal and I couldn't stay upright anymore. I collapsed and fell to the floor. I heard Zanan cures. I opened my eyes and closed them again due to the sharp light. I tried again and waited until I could focus and looked around me. I'm in the hospital. I remembered what happened and sat upright. My muscles protested but I ignored it. I looked to my left and saw Zanan sleeping in the chair next to my bed. When I looked to my right, I saw Crystal lying on a bed hooked onto machines. I got off the bed and walked over to her. She looks so peaceful sleeping that I couldn't help but stare. I took her hand in mine and felt the sparks as strong as before. I looked down at her and said, I, Julian Carmelo, accept you, Roxy, as my chosen mate. I am sorry that Tracy won't be my mate, but I've had my time with her and she is with Zane now. She accepted you this morning when she woke up, Zanan said and walked up behind me. I looked up at him and said, I never planned for any of this. Zanan looked at me and I could see sadness behind his eyes. This isn't your fault but my own. If only I didn't hurt her as much as I did in the beginning, this would have never happened. Her father was right, loving a fox comes with a price. Zanan said and looked at me, just don't make the same mistake I did. I looked down at Crystal and said never. Tracy POV, after the heated makeout session with Julian yesterday, I couldn't lie to Zane anymore, so I told him everything. To say he was mad at me isn't the right word, he is hurt and I feel even worse. I got home and went straight to the bath trying to wash off Julian's scent. I was still scrubbing when the bathroom door opened and Zanan came in. When he looked at me his smile died. "What is happening to you?" he asked me, never breaking eye contact. I looked down into the water and said, "It's a long story and I am confused." I started explaining my relationship with Julian from the beginning. He kissed me and I kissed him back. I said, looking at Zanan. He was looking at me as tough I struck him. The hurt behind his eyes made my dead heart clench and tears sprung to my eyes. "Zanan, please say something," I pleaded. I bent over the bath trying to take his hand, but he pulled away from me and just left. I got out the bath and wrapped a towel around me and walked into the room. "Did it happen more than once?" Zanan asked, sitting on the bed. "Yes," I said and looked down at the floor. "I have never in my life felt so miserable." "Are you still in love with him?" Zanan asked with hurt evident in his voice. "I don't know. It's complicated. I thought I felt sparks like I do with you and I was confused, and I still am, Zanan, but not about you. I didn't mean for any of this to happen," I said and sat down on the bed next to him. He turned towards me and said, "Well, I'll give you time to figure it out, and when you do just fill me in on the plans." And he left. I sat there for what felt like hours just crying and letting everything out. Zanan is yet again not doing training today, leaving me to do it again. I don't mind, but today is not a day for me. I haven't seen Zanan since yesterday and he isn't at training. "Everyone will do 3 laps around the ground," I said and watched as they started taking off. I ran with them thinking it would help clear my head, but instead it just made me think more. "Where is Zanan?" I heard Tommy ask from beside me. I looked over at him and said, "I don't know. I haven't seen him today." Tommy just looked at me, and if he is smart he would just drop it. "I haven't seen Crystal, Zanan, or Julian since yesterday when Crystal came back angry. I wonder what happened that made her so angry." I thought as ran past everyone. "Come on guys, you are slower than a human," I said and saw as everyone sped up and it became a competition to see who is faster. When we made it back to the middle of the field, everyone collapsed on the ground breathing heavily. "Okay, I will give you a second to catch your breath and then I want you to team up with your partner from yesterday," I said and did some stretching. I kept my eye open for Zanan, but he was nowhere to be seen. Zanan POV, I can't believe she would do something like that to me of all people. I knew something was wrong when she came back, but not just yesterday. From the day she came back with Julian she has been acting funny. I didn't think anything of it until yesterday when I could smell him all over her. I have never walked into the bathroom when she is bathing or showering, but I did yesterday so that she will have nowhere to run. I am hurt and disappointed. How could she do this to us, and why didn't we feel the pain or anything? I am currently sitting by the river outside of Pack Borders just looking at the water. I could rip Julian's head off for what he has done, but then I would hurt Tracy. I groaned and fell back onto the grass. I don't want to lose her. I have been waiting for my mate for years, and now that I have her I don't want to let go. I opened my eyes and nearly had a heart attack when I looked up into Spike's face. I rolled over and got up on my hands and knees. "Please Spike, if you find my heart just give it back," I said looking at him. "What are you doing here?" I asked looking around. What happened with Tracy and Julian isn't either of their faults. Mates are naturally attracted to each other. I looked at Spike confused and asked, "What are you talking about?" Tracy was supposed to be Julian's second mate, but he hid that fact from her and you, but no need to worry, their bond is dying," Spike said, and he has me even more confused now. "Spike, English please and try making sense." I said and sat up so that I can look at him. He took a deep breath and said, Tracy would have been Julian's second mate. Meaning she would have had two mates, you a wolf and Julian a vampire, but things have changed. Tracy will be only your mate. Her attraction to Julian is dying. It should be gone in a day or so. Spike said, and I felt like jumping up and down. That is the sparks she talked about when she touched him. So she didn't cheat on me, she was attracted to her mate. I jumped up and down like a small kid. I looked at Spike and said thank you, and then I ran to find Tracy. When I got to the field I was speechless. Training was going in full swing, but this is serious training. Wolves pairing up trying to attack Tracy, but she is taking them down one by one. I walked closer and asked, mind if I have a go? The training stopped and Tracy looked at me. Everyone else formed a circle around us, leaving us in the middle. No one knows this, but I have been taking training from Zanan and I do kickboxing. I couldn't name the emotion behind Tracy's eyes, and before I had a chance she came at me. I dodged the hit easily, going down and swiping my leg, hitting hers out from under her, causing her to land flat on her back. It went on like that for a while until she started getting angry. I don't know why, because neither of us has landed a punch yet. Her punches became faster and harder until she landed one on my shoulder, dislocating it. I groaned in pain and said, you win. Well, that concludes training for the day, she said and looked directly at me. I got up from the ground and started walking to the hospital where I know I will find Jeff. Where are you going? Tracy asked and caught up to me. I didn't say anything, just pointed at my shoulder. Where have you been, Zane? I looked over at her and saw the worry on her face. I needed some time. You sprung something on me that I never expected from you, I said, and it's the truth. She stopped dead and just looked at me. I didn't mean for it to happen, Zane. I know, and I'm not angry with you, I was just hurt, I said and saw her eyes shining with hope. I walked into the hospital and spotted Jeff. I explained what happened and he just shook his head. All of you should really find a different way to sort out your problems, because I am getting tired of putting you back together, Jeff said. Crystal POV, please tell me this is all just a bad dream and that I don't have a second mate. I kept repeating to myself as I pretend to be sleeping. I didn't hear anyone speaking, so I took a chance and opened my eye. When I didn't see or smell anyone, I opened both eyes. I hate Roxy, came Raven's voice in my head. I gave a sigh and rubbed my head. I know how you feel, I said. Why couldn't she forgive him like we did? I don't know, Raven, but things are a lot more complicated now. It doesn't have to be. Reject him and get it over with. I can't. I tried yesterday and it almost killed me. Get rid of Roxy then. Not gonna happen, Raven. She is as much a part of me as you are. So we will just have to see what happens. I should have never let her out in the first place. Well, you had to, because she is the only one that saved us. Raven scoffed at me and went to the back of my mind. Everything is just so confusing. I sat up waiting for Jeff to come and release me, but to my shock Julian came in. It was too late for me to pretend I'm sleeping and I have to face him sometime, right? Why does he have to be so gorgeous? Looking at him, I licked my lips and watched as he sat down in front of me, handing me a bottle of water. Did pretending become harder? He asked me with a smirk. I slapped my forehead and groaned because I forgot he can read minds. That's not fair. Stay out of my head, please. I pouted and just received a chuckle from him. How are you feeling? He asked, and I didn't miss the double meaning. I'm confused and it feels like I've been hit by a truck, I said and played with the bottle. Why did you kiss me, Julian? I asked. It seemed like the right thing to do at the moment. I didn't know it would complicate things more. he said, and he sounds sincerely sorry. Well, I didn't know either, Roxy deceived us both. I said and reached for his hand. Just before I reached his hand I pulled mine back. I didn't miss the hurt look in his eyes, but this is all just too much for me. It will take some time, he said and got up from the bed as Jeff came in. And she's awake, he said and winked at me. He knows I wasn't sleeping. I saw Zanan and Tracy walk past and started counting. I came to 3 when Zanan came walking in with Tracy following behind him. Crystal, he said, and it came out more like a question than a statement. Hey guys, I said, smiling slightly. Zanan was staring daggers at Julian, which caused me to clear my throat. What are you doing here? I asked, looking at Zanan. Tracy dislocated my shoulder, so I came to have it fixed, Zanan said and shrugged his shoulder. Julian looked over at Tracy and she just hid her face behind her hands and said, "It was an accident, okay? Why are you here?" Zanan asked, looking at me and then the machines. I wasn't feeling well and I passed out, so Zanan brought me here. I lied, but it's better than explaining the truth. Well, she is much better now and she can go home, Jeff said as he took off the machines. I threw the covers back and didn't realize I was only in shirt that rode up and was barely covering me. I looked over at Julian and saw his eyes darken and covered myself again. Can a girl get some privacy, please? I asked and just received a look from Julian and Tracy. I looked over at Jeff pleading with him, so he chased everyone out including Julian, and just when everyone was out Zanan came walking in, making me groan. I threw back the covers again and got out of bed. I felt lightheaded for a second and Zanan was by my side steadying me. I looked at him and I felt like hitting him, because if it wasn't for him then I wouldn't be in this mess. I blame you for the mess we are in, and I blame you for Roxy forming a bond with someone else, I said and walked out of the room. I have every right to blame him, because he caused this. I have to find a way to break the bond with Julian without going insane or dying. Eliza POV: I have been preparing for almost 9 months now and they still haven't made a move. I mean, how long does it take for them to do something? I have been doing research trying to find the weakness of a fox and I haven't found any, yet. Everything has to have a weakness, it's a matter of where to look. Mario has been of no help to me. He's been so focused on training his soldiers and making sure they will be ready, and to think he wanted to leave and run like a coward, and now he is working harder than everyone. Have you found something? Mario asked as he came into the library. Does it look like I found something? I asked, looking at him with an expression. Have you found the book of legendary tales? He asked me and started searching the bookcase. Of course. How can I be so stupid? I thought to myself as I started searching with him. An hour later we finally found the book, but some of the ages has been ripped out, and guess what pages? Every page about the fox has been ripped out, I said and threw the book onto the table. I can see that, Eliza, Mario said and fell into the chair with his head in his hands. This waiting is killing me. Are you even sure that they will do something? Mario asked. How can they not? Crystal found out about her mother. Zanan knows the throne is his birthright. Shall I go on? Okay, fine, you made your point. Do we know where they are? Because if they don't want to bring the fight here then we take the fight to them, Mario said, and he looked dead serious. All we know is he might be at the house where Odin used to live, I said and looked for a map. Do you know where that is? Mario asked, sitting up. No, I do not, but it is said that our wolves know. What are you doing with a map, Eliza? I am circling every pack surrounding the kingdom and then I will pinpoint where they are. I mean, how hard can it be? Mario got up from his chair and came to stand beside me. Together we marked every pack, leaving only unmarked territories open, which is more than I would have liked because it will make searching just so much harder. I looked over at Mario and said, "We will send wolves out to each unmarked territory just to observe and report back." "How many do you need?" he asked, looking at the map. "About 60 wolves. I don't want to send them alone, so 2 will go together." "Okay, we can use some of the trained wolves. They will leave tomorrow. Make sure they know where they are going," Mario said and walked out of the library. I stayed up most of the night marking each territory and printing out more maps. When I was done, there was one territory left near the coast. I decided to not put that in the other maps, as for I will go there. It's about high time I get out a bit. I left the library and took a shower, then climbed into bed. I stared at the ceiling for a few minutes until sleep finally claimed me. Tracy POV, how is this possible? I asked myself as I stand there staring at Julian from a distance. Yesterday I was ready to jump his bones, and today I almost feel nothing. I don't have the desire to be near him or to kiss him. I don't feel the need to touch him, nor do I look at him as anything but a friend. "What are you thinking about?" Zane asked me as he came to stand next to me. "Something is wrong with me," I said and looked at him. "What do you mean?" he asked. I explained what is going on in my head, or tried to at least. When I was done, he just looked at me and said, "It'll be okay." That caught me off guard because he didn't sleep in the bed last night because of Julian and I, and now he is so cool about it. I looked at him skeptically and then watched Julian again. He was standing with Jeff outside Crystal's room, not saying a word. I thought I saw lust in his eyes when Crystal removed the cover, revealing her bare legs, but when I looked again it was gone. I really am losing my mind, I thought, and turned around to walk away. Zane followed behind me smiling. I tried asking him about it and all I got was, "You will know soon." What does that even mean? I just shook my head and walked into the house. I need a long hot shower and 3 years of sleep. I found Delia and Maggie in the kitchen busy cooking, and it smells to die for. I am very happy that I can eat normal food, the only downside is it doesn't make me full. I have been living on bag blood ever since I came here, and I must say I wish for fresh blood from a living person. I didn't realize my eyes changed until Zane taped me and handed me a bag of blood. I looked at the blood and decided to just go out and hunt for something, even if it is a rogue, but I need a live body. "I think I'm gonna hunt today," I said and walked back out of the house. Before Zane could accompany me, I used my vampire speed and took off. I was well away from home when I stood and listened to my surroundings. I caught the scent of deer, bear, lion, and finally rogues. They smell disgusting, but I will settle for anything except wild animal. Okay, technically rogues count as wild animals, but they are half human. I followed the scent and finally saw the group. They were buff-looking men with wickedness behind their eyes. "Well, the world can definitely do without you lot," I thought as I made my presence known. "The one thing we are good at is being stealth." Well, look at what we have here," a tall dark-haired guy said. Everyone turned and looked at me, smiling and grinning. I grinned back, knowing they won't be smiling for long. I made quick work of them, keeping the biggest one for last. I must say he put up a good fight, but he lost in the end and I got what I came for. Covering each body with leaves and branches, I teleported myself home, thinking I'm in dying need of a shower. Zanian POV, when I saw Julian sitting with Crystal, my first thought was killing him, but then I remembered that is why Crystal ended up in the hospital in the first place. I was so set on having her reject him, that I was ready to walk out on her. When I felt a pain in my chest, I knew I've done something I swore to never do again, and that is hurt Crystal. This is the reason her fox chose someone else. I walked back and accepted them and just looked at her. I couldn't move because Blaze was having it out with me, making me feel even worse. When he finally gave up and blocked me out, I saw Julian holding Crystal and he didn't look so good himself. He handed Crystal over to me and then he collapsed. I cursed under my breath. I moved Crystal a bit, holding her with one arm, and Spike helped he lift Julian so that I can carry him over my shoulder. And that is how they got to the hospital. I had to walk so that no one sees me because explain a war is one thing but explaining this situation will never end. Jeff asked questions to which he got no answers to, so I'm sure he made his own assumptions. He started working on them, saying, he has no idea what to do with Julian because he has never treated a vampire before. He hooked Crystal up to machines and I don't know what else, and he left. I didn't leave her side for 2 days until Julian finally woke up. I went to get some coffee, have a shower and a change of clothes, and when I came back Julian was still out, so I sat down and fell off to sleep. When I woke up I saw Julian standing next to Crystal's bed holding her hand. I heard him say the words and remembered that Crystal accepted him this morning in her sleep. I don't know if it was her or her fox, but either way we are stuck with a third wheel for now. What do you want me to do, Zanan? Crystal asked me, throwing her hands in the air. We have been going on and on about the same thing, and that thing being Julian. Well, we know you cannot reject him, and he won't reject you. Tracy was supposed to be his second mate, not you. I said, walking around the room. Yes, well, look how that turned out. We will figure this out. Until then I want you to avoid him. I said to Crystal, expecting her to fight me, but she didn't. She just hung her head and nodded. Will you be able to? I asked, looking at her. I don't know, Zanan. I feel what Roxy feels and he is her mate, so I will be attracted to him and I would want to be close to him, so I don't know. She said, and I could hear the tiredness in her voice. You need rest and lots of it. I said and kissed her forehead. She rested her head on my chest and threw her arms around me. At least she is not blaming me anymore. I thought as I hugged her close, feeling the tension leave her body. I picked her up and carried her to the bed, laying her down and covering her with a blanket. I left the room and went to my office. When I stepped in I came face to face with Tracy. So you leave me with training for 3 days and then I see Crystal is in the hospital and no one knew. She said and huffed at me. I know, and I'm sorry. I will do the training tomorrow and you can take a break. I said, not really thinking because my mind is on other things. I know you spoke to Julian, and what is going on, Zanan? She asked, coming straight to the point. It's complicated, Tracy, and I don't have the time now to explain, but if this is real then everyone will know soon enough. I said and saw the confusion on her face. I was starting to get irritated and I think she saw because she said, I will just give you some time and see you at training tomorrow. And she left. I sat in my office trying to think of anything that might help me when Spike came in. I looked at him and he looked like he has something to say, so he did. Don't get rid of Julian just yet, he can help you. Spike said and paused. You will need the help for what is to come. I looked at him confused and asked. What is coming? Julian POV. It's been a week since Crystal and I have been in the hospital, and let me tell you, I am frustrated and temperamental because Crystal has been doing her best to avoid me. Every time I walk up to her she walks away. If she is in the yard playing with the girls she gets up and leaves. I am on the verge of breaking something when I caught sight of Tracy watching me. The pull between us died completely and now she is truly just a friend. I don't see her as anything else, and Zane for that matter almost jumped out of his skin when I said the pull is gone. At first he blamed me for not telling him, but instead kissing his mate behind his back, and then he blamed me for making Tracy feel bad because she didn't know. Let's just say my patience is running very low. Hey, are you okay? I heard Tracy ask and didn't even realize she came closer. I said and nodded my head, not trusting my voice to come out without betraying me. Julian, what is going on? Tracy asked me and I froze. What am I supposed to tell her now? I'm a 1,600-year-old vampire who thought you were my second chance just to have a fox come and mess it all up. Do I want her as my mate? Well, after the last few days, no, I don't. Do I want to reject her? Well, I cannot do that unless I'm ready for the consequences, which I am not. I closed my eyes and rubbed my hands over my face and exhaled loudly. I don't know, everything is just so confusing and I'm starting to feel like me coming here was a mistake. So I will be going home until Zanan knows what he wants to do. I said, and I could see her face changing from happy to sad. I just got you back and now you want to leave again, she said, and now I feel worse than ever. I can't even explain to her how I'm feeling or what is going on. I will be back as soon as I know what's going on. In the meantime, I have some things to sort out. I said and opened my arms for a hug. She didn't hesitate to fall into them and hug me back. Just stay a couple more days, please. She pleaded in a soft voice. I patted her back and pulled away from her, giving her a soft smile. I turned around to leave and saw Crystal standing by the door looking at me with I don't know what, anger, sadness or disappointment, but I honestly don't care. I don't belong here and her avoiding me just proved it. Why are you leaving? She asked, following me up the stairs. I felt like laughing out loud, but that would be wrong. So I just said, because I have things to sort out and then you won't have to work so hard on avoiding me. I turned and looked at her and I saw the guilt on her face. You think I wanted this? Do you honestly think that I wanted to be caught up in a love triangle feeling like a third wheel? I don't know what your fox did or how she managed to manipulate me, but she did, and now we are stuck in a situation neither of us wanted. I said, not caring anymore because no one is caring about how I feel. Crystal looked at me and just said, I'm sorry that you are caught up in all this, Julian, and I wish there was another way, but like it or not we are stuck together, so we have to figure out a way to make this work. If you want to run then fine, so be it, no one is stopping you. I hissed at her and stood over her. You think I run away from my problems? Well, I don't. I know when I'm not wanted, and right now I know I'm not wanted. That is how you feel, Julian, not how we make you feel. Says you who avoids me like I'm the plague. You barely spoke to me this whole week, so who is running from who? Crystal growled at me and I just couldn't hold back anymore. I crushed my lips against her, backing her up until her back was pressed against the door. I raised her hands up, holding them in place with my one hand while my other hand roamed her body, feeling every inch of her exposed skin starting at her collarbone. As I explore her body, she moans into my mouth and leans into me. She stopped fighting me and I knew I had her just where I want her. I broke the kiss so she can suck in a breath and kissed down her neck, finding her sweet spot, sucking on it. I let go of her hands and claimed her mouth once more. I can smell her arousal and it making mine all that more painful. I pressed my body against hers and heard her gasp. There was a knock on the door and by the smell I knew it's Zanan. Crystal broke out of her trance and straightened her clothes. Her hazy eyes fell on me, darkened with lust and want. I looked at her neck and smirked. What are you smirking about? She asked and ran her hand over her clothes once more. Julian, Crystal, open the door. I heard Zanan ask and unlocked the door, opening it. When Zanan stepped in, he looked at Crystal, then at me, and all he did was sigh. From now on no more sneaking around. Zanan said, rubbed his temples. What do you mean? Crystal asked, half confused. Why is she confused? I should be the one confused here. Zanan POV, so you want to tell me that the king and queen is now looking for us? Yes, and they are sending highly trained wolves. Why are you telling me this, Spike? I thought you didn't want to get involved. This is what I've been made for, Zanan. To help and protect the good ones. I have been talking to Spike for a while now and he still hasn't answered my question. What does Julian have to do with all of this? His father had a history with Eliza and her family even before she became queen, seeing him will throw her off balance. Like I said, he is supposed to be dead. I looked at Spike and raised a brow. Please elaborate. It's not my story to tell, Zanan, so if you want to know then ask him, and you cannot keep mates apart no matter how they came to be. Spike said and left through his door. I sat and stared out the window for a while thinking about everything and eventually gave up. I got up from my chair and walked out of my office in search for Julian and Crystal. I cannot be mad because they are mates and it doesn't matter what I do to keep them apart, they will find a way to be together, like now. I caught Crystal and Julian's scent coming from his room and I could smell Crystal's arousal. I shook my head and just knocked on the door waiting. When the door didn't open I said, "Julian, Crystal, open the door." The door unlocked and Julian opened it smirking. I looked at them and all I could do was sigh. From now on no more sneaking around, I said and received two confused looks. I walked into the room and closed the door behind me and said, "We can't keep avoiding this like it isn't happening and we can't ignore it because it won't go away. So what do you suppose we do?" Julian asked, looking between me and Crystal. "You move in," I said, looking at Julian. He looked at me shocked for a minute and then said, "I can't just move in, I have a coven I need to look after." Julian said and looked at Crystal. "You're right, you wanted to go home anyway, so why don't you just go?" Crystal said and walked out of the room. It feels good not to be at the receiving end when she does that. I looked at Julian and couldn't help but smile at his expression. "What did I do wrong?" he asked me and I just shrugged my shoulders. "You go home and do what you need to do, because you and me, we need to talk," I said and walked over to the door. "I just need a couple of days. I have to inform my coven on what is happening and then I have to assemble an army ready to come when I call," Julian said and picked up his bag. "Do what you need to do and don't worry about Crystal, she does this when something isn't going her way." "Yeah, and lately nothing has been going any of our ways." "Julian, just do me a favor and don't tell anyone that you are mated to a fox," I asked. It came out more like a plea than a favor, but he must know why. He nodded his head at me and we left his room. "Crystal, what is the problem?" I asked, looking at Crystal standing in front of the bedroom window looking out. "The problem is, Zanan, the bond is growing day by day and I can't keep Roxy locked up forever." "I know, that is why I've come to a decision." "And you don't have to keep Roxy locked up, Julian is her mate, you know." She spun around and looked at me dumbstruck. "Zanan, what is going on? A week ago you told me to stay away from him and now you are practically handing me to him on a silver platter." I sat down on the bed and told her about the conversation I had with Spike and what he said. After I was done explaining, she looked at me and all she said was, "Do I have any say in this?" "Not if you want a crazy fox, then no, we can't mess with fate," I said. "Fate is cruel," is all Crystal said before she fell down onto the bed, covering her eyes with her hands. Crystal POV, I don't know what to do anymore. It feels like I'm pregnant all over again. My emotions are all over the place, I am hot and my skin feels itchy and I have no idea what to think or say. The makeout session I had with Julian only made it worse. What is happening to me? I thought as I looked at Zanan. "Do I feel hot to you?" I asked him, moving closer so he can put his hand on my forehead. He looked at me and said, "You are burning up. Are you sure you're okay?" I looked at him and said, "I don't know what is happening," I said and got up from the bed. "I'm gonna take a cold shower." The cold water on my skin almost made me whimper. I could feel my body cooling, but the itch didn't go away. It's not an itch that you can scratch, more like 1,000 ants dancing under your skin. I turned the shower off and got out. As I walked into the room, a pain hit my abdomen and I groaned. Zanan came running to me, helping me to the bed, but when he touched me, fireworks went off and I moaned at the sensation. "We are going into heat," Raven said, and I snapped my eyes open. I looked up into Zanan's eyes and saw that they are now dark and blazes on the surface. I whimpered under his stare and saw him inhaling deeply. "You are in heat," I heard Zanan say, and he crushed his lips to mine. I whimpered and moaned as his lips leave a trail down my body, but somehow I don't feel satisfied. I looked at him and said, "I want Julian." Join our Facebook and WhatsApp group for more updates, link is given in description. Rest audiobook will be continued in next episode.